So, real estate.
Ooh, that sugar sweet, you got what I need. Sipping on the potion.
What's up guys, I've been using the new RS4 gimbal for the past 3 months now, and it's honestly been one of my go-to gimbal for shooting everything that I've done. So in today's video, we're also going to talk about what gear I have been using lately for real estate shootings. I will also give you guys 3 pro tips that you can use for real estate. So let's get into it. I have a super wide lens, so I can show off the room and make the space bigger. And I also have this 24-70mm, which is a very flexible lens. I use this lens for exterior and detail shots. Okay, first of all, let's just get this out of the way. So a gimbal move that I will avoid when shooting real estate is you're standing still in a corner and you're panning like this. And these kind of moves were also the kind of moves that I saw back in 2019. Not innovative or creative at all. Having movements, it's what differentiates a video from a photo. So for real estate videos, you want movements, smooth movements. Let's talk about gimbal modes. So the gimbal mode that I use the most when I'm shooting real estate is the PF mode, which stands for pan follow. So whenever you're panning, it will follow, but it will not tilt up and down. So you toggle this switch on the side here to the middle, and you'll have a gimbal on pan follow. Another mode that I like to use is PTF, which stands for pan tilt follow. So what it will do now is that it will pan, which is this, and it will also tilt, which is this. But I usually only use the PTF mode when using this 24-70 lens. Because when I'm shooting detail shot, I allow my gimbal to move up and down as well as to the side. And whenever I'm using the 15mm super wide lens, I'm 95% using the PF mode, which is just pan follow. Which brings us further to why. So the thing about real estate is that you want your lines to kind of line up parallel to your frame, which means that you don't want the camera to tilt down or up unless you're actually shooting stairs or something. But for the super wide lens, I just keep my gimbal at pan follow mode. I double tap behind and it will reset. So it will level out the gimbal and you will have your vertical lines pretty straight, which is a very good thing. The often mistake that I see amateurs do is that they tilt their gimbal too much down when shooting. So just because you have it in pan follow mode doesn't mean that the gimbal is not pointing down. It can still point down. You just have to double tap to reset, and then your gimbal should be level. Okay, so this is what I mean when I'm saying that you should use pan follow mode. Double tap behind to reset, and I often use the walls and the doors to have a good reference if my gimbal is level or not. So how you can do that is that if you look at the lines here, you'll see that the lines are pretty vertical and parallel to the frames. So let's take a look at these lines here when I tilt the gimbal down. You see what happened? These lines are not aligning with the end of this frame now. It's kind of pointed inwards. And inwards. A typical mistake that beginners would do is that they point the gimbal too much down. I'm double tapping here now, right? So it should be level because I have the mode on PF. Let's just use these walls as a reference. You see all these walls here? You see all the lines here in my house? They're aligned and pretty straight. If I tilt it too much down, it just kind of looks weird. That's the typical mistake I see people do, that they're shooting, they walk around like this, pointing downwards. When you're using your super wide lens, keep your gimbal level. Not down, not up, just for the simple sake of it. Unless you're shooting details. Whenever I shoot details, I like to have my lens somewhere in between 35 and 70mm. Then I'll allow myself to point downwards. It doesn't look as weird when you're zooming in and then do a shot. Yeah. but when you're using a super wide lens, pointing downwards, it just looks weird. So that's the first pro tip that I would say to you guys. For the simple sake of it, toggle the switch to pan follow mode and have it there. And then you're pretty much good to go. Okay, so the second pro tip that I have for you guys is that you want to use door frames when you're moving into a space. When you're moving past door frames and walls, it will create depth to your shot and also give a more dynamic shot, which is something that we really want. Instead of starting your gimbal move here, move back so you get the door frames and then start your gimbal move. Okay, so every time I know I want to do a pretty straight move, I use the lock button, which is here. I hold it down and the gimbal will lock itself. You see it's not panning. If I let go, the gimbal will pan. So whenever I know I want to do a straight move, I lock the gimbal and I can walk pretty straight. And knowing the fact that the gimbal won't micro pan while I walk. Okay, so for this shot, I wanted to point the camera pretty straight on the wall and then walk straight forward. What I typically do then is that I check my frames that everything is parallel. So I use every line I can see as a reference, both vertical and horizontal lines. And also kind of eyeing it to make sure that the camera is pretty parallel to the table, both straight forward and to the side. And when I think it's kind of dead straight on, I hold down the lock button so it won't turn, and then I'll do my gimbal move. I want to walk as straight as possible instead of walking to the side. So another pro tip that you can do is that instead of walking around not knowing what to do, you should have a point A and a point B. Point A is where you start from, and then point B is where you want to end up. And then you want to find the smoothest way from point A to point B. So let's say that I want my point A to be right here. So instead of starting at point A, I start a little bit further back so I can get into the momentum of the move. And this is my point B. And if you want to get a more creative shot like I like to do, you can always do something like a reveal shot, which is one of my favorite shots. It's just to mix up the pace and make it more interesting. I'll show you guys. Okay, now we're on a new listing. So my third tip for you guys is that try to do the same movement over and over again, because when you do the same gimbal move over and over, you can seemingly cut it in the edit. So let's say this room, right? You walk in and it's opening up to the right. Same with this other room. Walk in, opening up to the right. So for both of these rooms, you can do the same gimbal move and it will look better when you're editing. You can kind of do the same for this bathroom. The bathroom shot could have been just straight in, but I'm going to try to go in and then to the right, just to match the other clips. Same with this place. If I walk into this room and I turn around, look what we have here. Forward, opening up to the right. Okay, so I'm going to do the gimbal moves for you guys real quick. I'm going to try to do with one hand, both at the same time, so we'll see. Remember all the tips I gave? So just in that shot alone, I used a lot of tips that I just talked about. Using the door frames, point A, point B, and also having my gimbal on pan follow mode, PF. And lastly, turning my gimbal the same way, walking forward while panning to the right. Forward and then to the right. And then the same backward. And in this room also.
Make a move, baby, you got nothing.
Right now I'm using the 24-70mm and I'm zooming into about 50mm. So instead of doing a move like this, kind of works. I want to use the foreground here on the table. So I'm shooting 2.8 to get a blurry foreground and also a blurry background. I'm switching to pan follow. Much more interesting, right? Yeah, so I just use these plates as foreground. Here is another example of using the door frames, but now I'm using 50mm as a detail shot. That's it for today, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Hit the like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.